Hello and welcome to Mindscapes, our series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is a remarkable author. He's written 3 books, but that has given him a reputation far beyond the mere number 3. He's well known for his intellectual virtuosity and, more than that perhaps, the irreverence that he combines with that enormous intellectual vigor. I'm delighted to welcome Upamanyu Chatterjee.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Upamanyu, the cover of Memories of the Welfare State was the first thing that sort of, I didn't immediately notice it when I looked at it, and it sort of, you tend to grab and run for the inside of the book, and in the rear of the butt of a goat and a pile of files. Did you design the cover? Did you have something to do with it?
No, I can't claim credit. The cover was designed by the publishing firm, but I did have a say in it. I vetoed. I vetoed an earlier suggestion, which actually had the goat's face. I must confess that I liked the cover because of the color more than the symbolic inclusion of the memories juxtaposed against the files. I like the color and I like the typeface, but it's worked. So,
is there a sort of a symbolism in the choice of a goat? Was that sort of more comfortable and memories of other kinds that you might have been able to put on the cover?
That too was the suggestion of the publishing firm, because for all of half a sentence, I think, a goat appears in the book. He appears in the hero's office for a microsecond and is asked to disappear. Penguin liked the idea of the goat, and they decided as often.
So you don't claim responsibility for that. You spend a long time working on your books. You're not sort of prolific in the common sense of the term.
Yeah, it's been 3 books in
12 years?
Yeah, 12 years. Mm-hmm. Lots of reasons. One is I work very slowly. 2, I don't need to push myself because I have another job. 3, I don't think that were I to become a full-time writer, I'd work faster. You know, things just come at this kind of retarded pace to me. Mm-hmm. 4, this is going to sound really amateurish. It is. I mean, not being a full-time writer, I don't write for. I mean, I write for amateurish reasons.
What are these amateurish reasons?
I like writing as a process. I like writing every day. It seems to give me. It seems to give the day some form.
So how long do you spend each day writing?
It's the other way around. I tell myself that I should be able to do. It doesn't. It boils down to less than a paragraph per day. So a third of a page, or even on a good day, about half a page. But I tell myself I should be able to do that much today, and I try my level best to finish before I go to bed. So, given that I just work, at that snail's pace, in fact, it's a wonder that I've done 3 books.
So, how does the book then unfold? Is there a map that you keep sort of filling in the paragraph every day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's this enormous blueprint, horribly sort of overwritten, and all kinds of arrows and. But that is what, in fact, I work on for close to a year before I actually begin writing.
You know, how was your first book born?
As a short story. I was then hoping to publish a collection of short stories. This was to be the sort of experiences of a young civil servant in a small town, was to be the finale, the last fattish, longish short story. It simply grew out of hand. I kept telling myself, the X, Y, and Z I have to put in, etc. So at the end of it, I had, at that time, a 200+ page book. So when I touted the collection as a whole, the agent in London said, no, why don't we just, I like the last story, why don't you expand it? And that's how it began.
There's a great deal of sort of irreverence in your writings. Is that planned as a strategy, technique? Is that just an articulation of the way you feel? Do you think it helps a book sell?
No to the last. I include things because I think they're right and worthy of inclusion at that moment. Am I irreverent as a matter of principle? No. But, I mean, do I find things comic? I should hope so. I mean, I think of it as, I mean, comic vision sounds, is a pompous phrase, but I guess I find things funny.
I think that sort of your first book, August, was had sort of a youthful energy and effervescence to it. It had irreverence. I have to confess, I haven't read the second book, and we'll come to that in a few moments. But the Memory of the Welfare State, apart from the irreverence, also has, obviously, a concern and passion about issues and things that are happening, societal moments, societal concerns and crises. Does that come from your having spent that many more years in the bureaucracy and greater frustrations, greater insights into those more substantive issues?
In other words, have I grown up? No, but I can't vouch for reactions. English August, to my mind, was and still is a growing up book. It's a first book. In fact, it's more outrageous in tone, I think, than either The Last Burden or The Memories. But the difference between the two is really that English August concentrates on Agastya Sen as character. It's the encounter between, it sounds a horrible thing to say, it's the encounter between two Indias. But The Memories is a comedy. It is true that at one point I toyed with the idea of calling it The State of the Times. But I shouldn't be saying this, but there's nothing in the book that's new. I mean, there's nothing that one doesn't read about, in the papers every day in any columnists' tirade against, the way things are. And to my mind, that is ballast. It helps to keep the book going. While Agastya Sen floats in and out of it. It's also, The Memories is more planned in the sense it also helps to put Agastya in his place. I mean, he was seen at the end of English August as this kind of sensitive misfit. Poor boy, how will he manage in this wicked world? Well, there you are.
Sort of sequels usually follow, successful books, but you had a book in the middle, and that wasn't. It seems to have got some good press, but wasn't as successful, didn't draw as much attention to itself. Did you then feel, well, maybe I should go back to the old formula and sort of build on that?
No. English August was seen as volume 1 of a trilogy, in fact, even when I was writing it. The next book is a non-Agastya book, and the fifth will be his swan song. I mean, that, I confess, had been planned. And it's true, The Last Burden, was panned by some, but it received some good reviews. But the more, even when I read it now, I am quite satisfied with the end product. It's just meant to be a book that doesn't, yield its richness at the first
How much did that disappoint you? That it didn't sort of get the kind of response that you might have sought, or is the response for you complete in the process of writing the book? I mean, we each respond to what we create in different ways. So what were you
half and half actually. It's always nice to read good reviews, but
they didn't particularly matter.
Yeah, what is it? It's something in it's a character in. Is it the seagull? In Chekhov's Seagull, I think, a writer who says, "Oh, yeah, when I read a bad review, I'm sort of upset for 3 days and then it's over." Mm-hmm. It is that really. Of course, when one reads some particularly vicious review, hey, this is simply not on. But,
fortunately, what does a good review do for you?
Oh, it makes you feel happy.
Lasts longer than the 3 days?
Unfortunately, no, because I think one of the reasons is that one has this other life that beckons. I mean, you can't, that these, office to go to and files to clear and so on. So I find that wonderfully balancing. Otherwise, one could crack up over, the fiery particle killed by an article, wasn't it?
So how do you end up defining yourself? You're a writer, you're a bureaucrat, you spend more of your day in performing the functions of a bureaucrat. And if I were to meet you at a party and I introduce myself, whatever, as a writer, doctor, dentist, television host, or what have you, and said, well, what do you do? What would you say?
Bureaucrat. In fact, I always, it's never occurred to me to say I'm a writer. One of the reasons is modesty, of course. No, no, it's also that, with 3 books, it's, I'm a writer, really. What have you written? You avoid that kind of question. And since, I've been in government for 17 years, so it comes naturally, actually. I say bureaucrat.
Is the sort of the persona of the bureaucrat a satisfying one? Or is that something that you just do because you have to make a living?
It's satisfying, but that needs. By that I mean that I like what I do in office because I literally learn new things every day. Perhaps not a good reason for but it's to my mind, it's still the it's still the best reason. I mean, government is so huge and complex that the fact that you shift from sort of post to post, from desk to desk, actually enables you to know things that otherwise one would never know. As it is, people outside government don't know enough about about its complexity.
Do you feel that you're doing useful work in what you do? You see that part of your life as being productive, making a contribution in some ways, beyond making a livelihood?
It's difficult to say yes in the Secretariat, because in the Secretariat you decide policy. So actually you just you do a lot of paperwork. But it's possible to say yes to that if you are in the field, when you're actually arranging for tube wells, electricity, land reform. It's possible to say yes to that question. At the same time, let's be honest, because of its size, government moves very, very slowly. I mean, it can't, I think, move faster.
Do you sometimes feel that with your sensitivity as a writer, your intellectual vigor, and the other sort of qualities that one would associate with a writer of your caliber, that is sometimes incompatible, out of place in the processes and structures and systems of the bureaucracy? I mean, how intelligent a note can you write on a file? How eloquent can it be?
I think government receives a bad press. The amount of, the number of fine minds that I have seen in government is astounding. There are, I can think of at least 5 first-rate writers. Well, four are write in Odia, but first-rate writers who, one is a Gyan-Peter Award winner, who were at the same time civil servants. No, there are some very fine minds in government. How much of that mind do you use when you work depends on yourself. I try and sort of focus on what I'm doing in office. That I think is a personal.
Much of your time as a civil servant has been, I may have got this wrong, but has been in the Ministry of Human Resources and Culture and Education. Is that because that's what is associated with your area of skills and interest, by choice, or by some sort of design so that it enables you to write?
No. One is, I think the correct phrase is one is picked up. One sends one's name for saying that one is, say, willing to go to the government of India from the state government, and then one's name is circulated. So one is just picked up. No, accident more than.
What are you working on now? Are you still sort of writing your paragraph a day?
Oh yes.
What's the time lag between the last paragraph that got published and the next one that goes into the pipeline?
Oh, ages. But I have begun a fourth book. By begun, I mean, of course, mapping out its blueprint. I've begun that. It should. I consider that work too. That should finish in about 6-8 months' time. Then I'll actually start.
Obviously, I remember from a time back in college that you had spent a year doing something else and then decided that your passion was really English literature, and you took time off, lost a year in a very sort of, in the academic sense, and pursued your real passion. How early were these sort of well springs of commitment born?
Yeah, I did history for a year. Now it seems, then it seemed traumatic to lose a year to switch from history to literature. Now it seems, not a very serious thing to have done. But it's funny because history later became a subject that fascinated me, and I began reading history as a kind of layman, as an outsider. In fact, if one were, the advantage of studying any literature is one begins to see how one can use language to communicate in ways which are not simple. I mean, in fact, that's the real virtue of.
A change like that is unusual, traumatic, but also enormously brave at that time. To be able to say, well, I'm going to give this up, and this is what I really want to do. It's an affirmation which is unusual at that age.
Yeah, in fact, it was tough to suddenly see your peers, senior to you.
So what was that impulse? Was there
a
writer sort of simmering inside of you?
I wanted to study Beckett, D.H. Lawrence. That was definitely, but it's not so. I used to write in school as well, one-act plays for inter-house play festivals and so on. So, but there was, I recall distinctly that there were texts that I wanted to study and not just read. So that prompted me to lose a year.
Do you have unpublished bits and pieces lying with you that might one day see the light of day, or you've discarded because you didn't think they were ready for the public domain? Or does everything that you create get worked on, refined, and polished till it's published?
Yes, to the second. I have lots of scraps, but I try and, when I'm reviewing or revising things or going through old files, I try and see what can be included in, because most of this, is a process of accretion. You build on something, you change something around. So I personally find that it's much easier to do that than to chuck things out of the window and start afresh.
How difficult, the first page is proverbially the most sort of difficult thing to get going. How much of a challenge is it for you?
It isn't sacred. I mean, in the sense that it happened for both The Last Burden and The Memories. I began with this sacrosanct first page. By the third, it was out. In fact, in The Memories, it became, I think, the opening of chapter 2 or 3, but in The Last Burden, it came in much later. So it looks, it looks final when you start.
How much reworking do you do? I have to say that I felt that your most recent book, that there were passages of great passion and great flow, and there was a great sort of rush of adrenaline that you felt, that the writer felt, and was hence you felt as a reader. But there were moments that seemed somewhat labored. Does that reflect the process that you go through in writing yourself?
Well, rewriting, yeah, there's a lot of that. I mean, I can't, people who don't, writers who don't rewrite, to me seem extraordinary.
What I meant was that, you have some passages which are in this rush of passion and eloquence and obviously coming from the depths of the soul, and then there are other bits that you feel are sort of are serving as bridges between those moments of intensity.
Is that absolutely? It happens to all, I think. There are some. In fact, it's Coleridge or somebody, or I mean, it sounds as though it should be Coleridge. I mean, there is this idea of, there are all these ups and downs in all kinds of books, and some of them are just bridges, as you said, between the stuff of the book. Yeah, that I think is.
But some writers sort of plan those in the sense of the little peaks and the troughs, and sometimes they just happen because you can't find eloquent enough bridges, and the book has to be complete. It has to have a beginning, middle, and end. And so the query really was, to what degree, as you've studied literature and you sought to study it because it was something that you would draw upon. So to what degree do you sort of consciously go in there and look at these aspects of structure and flow?
Structure a lot. I mean, it can't be otherwise. What needs to go in where is mapped out at my blueprint stage. But again, one can't predict what will be liked and what won't be by the readers. So, but all of it, to my mind, is necessary. Even the troughs are necessary. Sometimes just as breathing spaces between before the next big scene or the next big issue.
And what happens when books, when novels become films?
You speak in the plural, no?
Well, this one may well. It probably will. Well, English August was a nice film. It was it's nice to watch. It's lark. I mean, to me the book is more precious. But the actors were good. It has a nice. It works as film. But what happens to the author? Sort of the internal landscape that you're trying to recreate in someone else's mind suddenly becomes living, tangible, concretized reality. Even if on a screen. How does the author respond to the internal universe that he had created from himself, was trying to create in the reader, and there is a concrete.
Yeah. Well, the fact that he in the film captures, I mean, it doesn't replicate, but it captures adequately. I mean, more than adequately, the atmosphere. Was to me very gratifying. I mean, at last, here was another reflection of the things that I was writing about. To the fact that film is a different medium, etc. So, at the same time, obviously he picked and chose. We dropped this. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. And he created, in one sense, a universe that was similar and yet different.
Was it a revelation?
No, we did the screenplay together. So I knew from before I knew beforehand what he was not going to include.
But I meant the physical universe when you sort of, when you visually see it with,
Yeah.
with the texture of reality there in a physical sense.
Well, in the sense, it was both, yeah, it was a revelation in one sense because it was both realistic and yet surreal. The first, it's not a good example, but it's the first example that springs to mind. I mean, in the film, the Agastya's room is painted a completely impossible blue. I mean, no circuit house room, in life is painted that shade. But at this, you could see that that was the point of the, so it, yeah, it was very interesting. I mean, to see it on film, yeah.
So the book that you're now working on, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, months, do you have a dream? Do you have a vision? Where does it end?
I had begun with the intention of publishing a book to coincide with each Olympics. It's a cut-off date for myself. Hopelessly behind schedule already. But I give myself 3 or 4 years, I think. I took far too long over both the memories and the last burden. I just tell myself it's not. I began this in 2000. It's now, so I'd say, okay, I'll try and finish by 2005. Keep my fingers crossed.
So is the measure a word count or?
No, I need. The nice thing about writing a book is that it gives you a lot of elbow room. You can put in all kinds of junk. You can do what you want. So you can, and so 2005 because well. It's not a complex book, but it's meant to be funny, but it has a lot of stuff in it which I don't see myself being able to rush through. So,
my goodness, I admire that patience. Upamanyu, thank you very much. This has been a great
pleasure.